The first thing Mateo checks every morning isn't his phone. It's the sky. He steps onto his back porch in Lancaster, California, and watches how the light hits the Joshua trees. For 10 years, he's read the day not in forecasts, but in photons. His coffee is already brewed in a dented thermos he's had since trade school. He sips slowly, eyes scanning the roofline across the street, where he installed panels last spring. They gleam like obsidian tiles, clean, efficient, alive. Mateo's hands are his tools. Callus's map, a decade of climbing ladders and tightening bolts. But he learned that the real work is in the quiet moments, the calibration of an inverter, the click of a disconnect, the things that tell him whether a system will breathe or choke. He didn't always understand that. Back in August 2020, the heat came like a hammer. Temperatures hit 113 degrees for 5 straight days. The grid buckled. Rolling blackouts swept through Southern California, blinking out entire counties like candles in a storm. Mateo was on a roof in Palmdale when the lights died. Not just the building, everything. Traffic signals, cell towers, even a backup generator sputtered and quit. He watched people stumble out of stores, confused, their phones dying. A woman tried to pump gas, no power, no fuel. Kids sat on curbs, fanning themselves with flyers. No AC, no refrigeration, no certainty. But then something shifted. Down the block, a retired teacher named Mr. Rivera, for whom Mateo had installed a small off-grid system 2 years prior, stepped outside and flipped a switch on his garage wall. A string of LED bulbs flickered on. His fridge hummed back to life. Neighbors gathered like moths. He offered ice, charged phones, let folks sit in his shaded patio, where a single 3-kilowatt solar setup with a battery kept a fan spinning and water cold. No fanfare, just light, just coolness, just dignity. Mateo watched from the roof, his heart pounding not from the heat, but from revelation. He'd always believed in solar, but in that moment, he began to trust it. That night, sitting in his truck with a headlamp on, he sketched designs on a notepad. Not just for wealthy homeowners, not just green upgrades. He started thinking in terms of resilience. Microgrids for block parties, battery banks for elderly neighbors, systems that could island themselves during outages, keeping fridges running, medical devices charged, and Wi-Fi alive. In the week following the blackout, Mateo couldn't sleep. He drove around neighborhoods with his brother Leo, who worked for the county water department, checking on elderly residents. They brought water, battery-powered fans, and extension cords rigged to car inverters to charge phones. They found one woman, Ms. Delgado, whose diabetic son's insulin was at risk because her fridge had been warm for 18 hours. Mateo jury-rigged a cooler with a 12-volt fan powered by his truck battery. It wasn't elegant, but it held the temperature. That night, Leo told him, "You know, most folks think solar's just for saving money, but this is survival." Mateo nodded. His training taught him about net metering and panel efficiency. Nobody ever talked about insulin. Nobody mentioned the chilling silence that falls over a neighborhood when the hum of refrigerators stops. When power finally stabilized, Mateo called his old instructor from his certification course. "What's the simplest way to keep a fridge and a few lights running during an outage?" he asked. The answer was a hybrid inverter with battery backup, but it was expensive. "Is there a cheaper way? For regular people?" There was a pause. "Not really, unless you design for it from the start." That conversation sent Mateo down a rabbit hole. He spent nights studying off-grid schematics, watching YouTube tutorials from electricians who rebuilt after Hurricane Maria, and reading forums where Alaskans shared DIY battery banks. He learned about load prioritization, how to wire a subpanel so only essential circuits stay live during a blackout. He practiced installing transfer switches that automatically disconnect from the grid when it fails, preventing backfeed and enabling safe solar use. He started offering resilience packages, modest systems, paired with a single lithium battery, enough to run lights, a fridge, a router, and a medical device. No luxury loads. Just lifelines. At first, clients were skeptical. Why not just get a generator? They'd ask. Because generators need fuel, Mateo would say gently. And when the roads are blocked or gas stations are closed, the sun still rises. Slowly, word spread. A nurse in Quartz Hill signed up after her CPAP machine failed during a storm. A young couple with a newborn wanted to ensure their well pump wouldn't stop. A veteran with PTSD found comfort in knowing his home wouldn't plunge into darkness without warning. Each installation became a conversation, not a transaction. Mateo would sit at kitchen tables, sketching on napkins, asking, "What keeps you up at night when the power flickers?" One rainy afternoon, he met Rosa, a widow in her 70s, living in a mobile home park. She showed him her husband's old, rusted toolbox and whispered, "He always said we'd go solar someday." Mateo designed a system that fit her budget. On activation day, she cried when her lamp turned on during a simulated outage test. "It's like he's still taking care of me," she said. Moments like that rewired Mateo's understanding of his craft. It wasn't about kilowatt hours. It was about continuity, about preserving normalcy in chaos. He began documenting his installs, not for marketing, but for memory. He kept a journal, not just for logs, but for reflections. He wrote, "Today, I realized my job isn't to sell panels. It's to return agency to people who feel powerless." Even his tools took on new meaning. His Klein voltage tester wasn't just for safety. It was a promise that energy was flowing where it was needed most. His torque wrench ensured connections wouldn't loosen in high winds. The blackouts didn't stop. Heat waves returned. Wildfires choked transmission lines, and each event sharpened his focus. He partnered with a local nonprofit to offer sliding scale installations for low-income seniors. He trained 2 apprentices from the community college, both daughters of farm workers, who now lead their own crews. One evening, after finishing a system for a community clinic, the director handed him a drink. "You know," she said, "before this, we had to cancel appointments every time the grid hiccuped. Now, we're the only place in the valley that can keep vaccines cold during an outage." He smiled, looking up at the panels catching the last amber light. They weren't just hardware. They were promises etched in silicon and steel. If you've ever considered solar, not just for savings, but for security, you're not alone. Many homeowners start with a simple question. Could my home keep running if the grid went down? For many, the answer lies in simple but reliable backup power. Tools like the Goal Zero Yeti power stations or Enphase IQ batteries are making this kind of energy independence more accessible than ever. And for pros like Mateo, reliable gear is everything. He still swears by his Klein Tools voltage tester for safe, quick diagnostics on the job, and his Stanley thermos has survived years of desert dust and dawn commutes. We'll link to some of those in the description below. Mateo still checks the sky each morning. But now, he also checks his phone not for alerts, but for messages. A text from Rosa. "Lights still on. Thank you." A photo from Leo. "Your battery kept Mom's oxygen running through the storm." He saves them all. Because in a world growing less predictable, Mateo has found his rhythm not in avoiding the darkness, but in preparing for it, gracefully, one rooftop at a time. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores the human side of technology. See you next time.